Question everything in pursuit of your purpose. Ask yourself, what if?
Thank you guys for joining us again for another episode of Pursuit of Purpose. I'm Rob. This is Chuck. And today we have with us a very special guest. He's someone I've known almost my entire life. I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell us a little bit about himself.
My name's Kent Batman, and I have known Robbie since he was 8 years old. And I'm not sure what all he's told you, but look forward to talk about it.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, you did a great job introducing yourself. Tell us about who you are, what you do currently.
Okay. Well, currently I'm involved in several different ventures, but I manage sales for a payroll company, which is something that you and I worked in years ago together.
The origin of our business.
The origin of the business together. That's right. And I also, as somewhat of a volunteer, I'm president of the Texas Association of Soil and Water Conservation Districts. So what we do is we work with farmers and ranchers and manage private property to a better conservation purpose. And there's money involved from the federal government. We help to locate that and sort it and that kind of thing.
How long have you been doing that? It's been a pretty long adventure.
Yeah, 25 years.
Wow.
I'm president now of the State Association for 3 years, or this will be my third.
How'd you get roped in? I mean, how did you get involved?
That's exactly what happened. You get roped. You know, you're there, or you miss a meeting, and they nominate you.
Oh, that's great.
Come back, and suddenly you're the president.
I've learned a little bit about that. I'm in some volunteer stuff, and I've experienced a little bit of that.
Yeah.
So, have you found that? I'm just curious because we don't get a lot of discussion about volunteer work on the show. So, and a lot that I've read about is that people that are involved with volunteer stuff, they always seem to say that they benefit more from being a volunteer than they do from pursuing dollars. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I definitely would. I've learned so much. You know, our current agricultural system in this country is so confusing. You know, and when I look at Chuck, I can see possibly he might have had a shared background in farming, in your family, farmers.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when I was growing up, you know, we walked the corn and cut the beans, or walked the beans and cut the corn, and we did everything manually, and it was all ecologically valuable,
friendly,
appreciated, friendly. Today, most of what we do is with chemicals. So much of our food comes from foreign countries. It's not appealing, and it's probably not good for us. We listen to RFK Jr. and he says, "Man, that's what I've been trying to say." They listen to him, of course. Now they hate him, you know. But it's been fun for me to be involved with farmers and ranchers who really do appreciate, value their land, value their product, value their communities. That's right. The volunteer portion of it has been a great joy.
This is a little off topic, but while you were talking, something came to my mind. You talked about vegetables, you talked about crops of that nature, but I'm curious. This is off, so I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole.
Okay.
Does the same thing happen to our livestock?
Yeah.
Are we stripping them? Are we destroying the nourishment value of our meats with chemicals that we do to our vegetation?
Yeah, I don't know.
Isn't that a curious thing?
It is. For one thing, so much of our meat now comes from another country.
Yeah.
You know, it can be called
what they're doing.
No, it can be called American beef because you fed it for 3 days in a feedlot in North Texas. You know, the way it was, you know, my grandfather was a dairy farmer. He probably had 35 to 50 cows. That was a dairy farm. Now a dairy farm is 6,000 cows. They're kept inside all the time. They don't go outside. They're fed who knows what. So did it degrade the protein, the calcium, the value of the nutrients of the
product? It almost has to.
Right.
It's possible. It's sure possible. Now you'll see milk that says no hormones, no whatever.
Yeah.
And so they recognize there's a problem. But the way it should be, you know, if you drive 20 miles north of here, in the 80s, there was dairy farms all over the place.
Right.
Local dairies.
Right.
They processed them here in Beaumont, Texas.
That's right.
They distributed it. Lots of times you had a milkman that brought stuff to you.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't know where it came from, you could find out real quick.
Yeah.
If somebody got sick, they'd know where to go to determine who it was that gave the bad milk.
That's right.
Right.
You know, when Bluebell had listeria, remember that?
Yeah.
We knew because it was Bluebell.
Yeah.
We don't know if it's some national company that sells to Walmart.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So local grown, all of that kind of stuff is a much better choice. Did it affect the proteins? It affected them. Whether it depleted the nutrient value, I'm not sure yet.
who knows? And who knows what other long-term effects it's having on us, on our ability to grow, on our ability to fight disease and and our infections with different things and cancer and everything else. Who knows what long-term impact.
Joe Rogan said on a podcast just recently that most men have Roundup. I can't remember the chemical name of Roundup, but the weed killer.
Yeah.
We have it in our reproductive organs.
Yep.
We have Roundup from eating. Maybe we just ate the cow that ate the grass that ate the Roundup.
Wow.
But either way, it's not good. It's not right.
Yeah. Well,
do you think that's contributed to been kind of in this, I don't know, the last 15 plus years? If I come down with something, my first go-to has actually been, is there a natural approach to this before I start calling the farm, calling the doctor and all that kind of stuff, which I'll do it if I have to, but I'd prefer not.
Right.
So I do a lot of preventative stuff. I try to eat different and different supplements. But I've noticed the more I start talking to folks about this, that even our market seems to be shifting, almost like it's trying to shift back. We have more
I think so.
farmers markets.
Yep.
We have even people who I've come to know, I don't purchase this way, I probably could, I guess, the best they can, organic farms. And of course, you can see the difference in their beef and the beef you were describing. I mean, it may be noticeably a leaner looking, animal, but it's it's got to be a better quality. At least it seems.
Well, there's less added to it. Grass-fed beef, lots of times the fat is kind of yellowish because they're eating grass that's got chlorophyll. I know you had chickens. Yard eggs have that bright orange yolk because they're eating chlorophyll,
and they have so much a better texture and flavor and everything about it.
Yeah, it is. I have chickens again. Really enjoying that.
Well, I'm looking forward to my next round of chickens.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I got cows now. I don't have any chickens.
Good.
So now that we've gotten through that, and thank you for cooperating with our little rabbit trail there, but tell us about your childhood. Where did you grow up? You mentioned that you were working through a farm and doing that kind of stuff as a kid. Where was that, and what was that like?
I grew up, my dad, mom are both from Iowa, Norwegians, as we talked about. Dad paid for his education with the GI Bill. Immediately, I was 6 months old, he moved to California. Was out there teaching school in California for 3 years, and then moved to Minnesota. So I lived there for 8 or 10 years. And then we moved to Dallas, Texas. Lived there for 3 years. And then we moved to Clinton, Mississippi. And I stayed there for like 9 years. They moved on. And so anyway, I moved around a lot growing up.
Those are some major cultural shifts.
There was a lot of major shifts. And the point is, really, people are pretty much the same everywhere.
You can find good people and bad people anywhere. That's true.
I do think there's a big difference in rural versus urban.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And so, whereas my parents would always choose to live, in a suburb or either further out of a suburb, the people were so similar because of that. Whereas the people that I knew in a more urban setting, the most urban setting I lived was Irving, Texas. And you know what I learned there? Everybody in a subdivision comes from virtually the same economic strata, right? So if you go to a school up there, you don't learn how to deal with people that parents make more money or less money than you do, right? When you go out in the real world, you see, wow, there's a lot of different backgrounds.
Yeah.
So the other thing in a suburban school system, they don't teach a lot, right? Because you don't need to know how to weld if you're going to college, right? You don't need to know how to wire something if you're going to college.
Right.
They used to have, when we were in school, VOTEC.
Yeah.
Okay, you can't even find those anymore.
Right.
In a rural community, like my kids, they learned how to do all that stuff in ag.
Yeah.
And so, and the other part about living in a more rural area, the adults would call and say, hey, I need some kids to come over to help do this or that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Bale hay, build barns, and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
You did that in rural areas. And that's nationwide. In urban areas, they've never sat around wiring a house. They've never plumbed one.
They wouldn't know what to do with a bale of hay if it fell off and hit them in the head.
And in fact, that's the problem with food. Why does it come so far away? Because those people don't even know it didn't come from the store.
Right.
Right.
So it's the lack of experiences that I found in the time that I spent, like 3 years in Irving, but also people that I've met you know, my son moved up to Dallas. He's a preacher in Dallas, as you know.
Okay.
And he met people that had never shot a gun before, which nobody in the rural area has grown his whole life
I
without
bet
shooting a
that
gun.
was
Right?
shocking to
Yeah,
me.
it was.
I bet he was like,
The other thing he noticed was you can't see stars in Dallas.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So when he would bring people home from school, first thing they would do, you know how this works, you pull up in the driveway. We got a long driveway. We're in the country. It's dark. So they go out. First thing boys do when they get out of the truck after a long trip,
Pee.
pee. So while they're peeing, they're looking up and those guys all said, wow, look at all those stars.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First thing they noticed.
Yeah.
And then, you know, they go shoot guns and they do a lot of other things. And most of the time they say, this is how I want to raise my kids.
There you go.
Right. So I guess, yes, a lot of different places, a lot of similarities too.
So you grew up moving quite a bit.
Yep.
You didn't from that description. You didn't really have necessarily roots in any one any one place.
I would agree.
So that exposed you to a very different cultural dynamic for yourself.
Yeah.
It forced you to be able to quickly relate in any social setting.
I would say so. Yeah.
Do you think that lended you to an advantage to you in your life overall?
I do. I think there's a big advantage to having a lot of experiences, kind of like what we said.
Yeah.
I don't usually meet strangers. Sooner or later,
Exactly.
we get to be friends, and that's a value. But you know, I can look at my kids, and they're pretty outgoing, and they do pretty well, even though they lived in the same area their whole life.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you can work to expose that. I think it's harder, right?
Right.
If you're in too much of a cocoon, you don't grow in a real fantastic butterfly.
Right.
Mm.
And there's this huge world of people out there.
Yeah.
If you're scared of all of them,
That's it.
what a limit you place on your life.
Yeah. My dad told me years ago, prejudice is really fear. You know, and
Prejudice, yeah.
Yes.
if you around people all the time, you have no reason to fear. So you don't have any reason to have prejudice either.
Right.
But if you have no experience, actually with no experience, you can have no fear too. So I guess it can work either way. It's still a choice, but fear is the root.
Right.
So your dad was a veteran.
Dad was, he was a Marine. That's how he paid for his education. But then he became a school teacher. But then after that, when he moved the second time, he worked for a company that moved him around. And he became a plant man. He was
You guys are fixing to hear the name of a company that I've heard since I was 8 years old.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The company name was Deluxe Check Printers. and that's interesting. You would recognize the name, but today people don't. You know, who buys checks, right?
Right.
Right.
So this company was the largest check printer in the world, and they sold them to banks.
Yeah.
Later on, I got out of college. I went to work for that company
Okay.
in sales. And so I called on banks and asked them to use our product as opposed to one of the three other companies that represented the other half of the industry, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a great experience. Bankers are great people, you know, very salt of the earth, represent the community, you know, very well usually. And so that was a fun time. That industry hardly exists today, though,
Right.
as you can understand.
Yeah,
Right.
like so many industries.
Like so many.
And well, I mean, they went extinct and were converted to something else.
Yeah.
You know, what was discipline like growing up in your home?
My dad was a big disciplinarian.
What does that mean?
Well,
What sort of discipline did you experience as a little bad child?
oh, little bad child, I got a lot of whippings. As I got older, I still got some whippings, but they weren't effective, right?
Yeah.
So my dad had to come up with more creative punishments, and that usually meant groundings, you know, being cut off from things.
Deprivation
When I
punishment.
was up in Irving, I got in a fight. Early on, I had just moved to this area. And new kids, you move in here, you get in a fight, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the coach sends us into the gym, puts boxing gloves, and said, "Y'all go at it." And then he calls over and says, "Y'all aren't even fighting. Come over here and take a lick." So we go over and he whips us, right? And the other kid said, "Well, how many licks do we have to take if we want to quit now?" And the coach said, "You got to take 3 more." And the other kid says, "That's what I want." And then the coach looks at me and he says, "Well, that's up to Batman." I'm the new kid now trying to fit in. I said, "Yeah, fine. We'll just take the licks." Okay, so he whipped us both.
Mm-hmm.
And you remember you had gang showers? So I go into the shower and everybody goes, "Oh," right? I was actually bleeding. When I got home that night, I was bleeding through my shorts. Yeah.
Golly.
So my mom calls the principal, or calls the coach actually, and said, "Look, we believe in corporal punishment, but this looked a little excessive." The coach said, "Ma'am, It probably was. But we try and spank someone until they recognize that it hurt. Let us know that they recognize it. He said, that other boy, every time we hit him, he yelled and screamed. He said, every time we hit your son, he just sat there. I said, so my mom said, you're right. That does sound like my son. So whippings weren't as effective as
you had already experienced all that so much that it was
what do you
just like, okay, go ahead.
And I've got 3 sons, and you've been the recipient of watching those 2 fight, or 2 of them fight, and maybe not the other 2 fight as much. But
I've witnessed you fighting with one of them.
Yeah, well, I had to do that too. But the oldest one, he could take pain.
Oh yeah.
But a whipping did fine for him. You did it. He said, sorry, went on. The middle one, it didn't work. I had to do things like, we were trying to go to church one time, and he comes out wearing these ratty blue jeans. I said, go up and change clothes, come back. Comes back in nicer clothes. Next week, he comes back down, same thing, ratty blue jeans. I said, son, the next time you come up with ratty blue jeans, you're going to wear the school uniform. I went to Christian school a little while.
Yeah.
Khaki pants and polo shirt. You're going to wear that at the public school for the whole week. Sure enough, he comes down and actually blue jeans. I sent him to school in his khaki pants, and he was convinced that was the worst form of childhood.
Nice.
But it wasn't. The worst form was when I was talking to the principal of the school, and he said that it was surprising to see Joel wearing flip flops and shorts in January. I said, really? So when he got home that night, I grabbed Paul. Paul drove the Suburban.
Paul's the oldest, Joel's the middle, and Neil's the youngest.
Okay.
And so I grabbed them both in the room, and I said, son, if he changes out of his khakis tomorrow on the way to school, I'm going to give you a whipping. So he looks at his brother and says, I'm not taking a whipping for you. You're going to wear the khakis. And of course, so he got more weeks of punishment too.
Yes.
And years later, I ran into one of his teachers. She goes, which one of your kids did you ground from his jeans? It worked.
That's awesome.
Then it became notorious. I love it.
That is great stuff.
It was great.
Well, I hope those boys watch this show and they get to experience this story.
I'll encourage them.
Yeah.
They've heard it a few times.
Oh, I'm sure they have, but now they can, hit play and
Yeah, that's true.
as many times as often as they like. So, so we've already foregone the need for the question of house discipline in your home with your kids.
I believe it too. And my kids turned out awesome.
They're very respectful. They're very responsible.
I'm biased as can be, but in all seriousness, they're awesome. They're great kids, great. They all have families. I've got 8 grandkids now.
Congratulations.
Wow. It's crazy.
That's amazing.
What do your grandkids call you?
They call me Pops.
Okay.
Okay.
Kind of funny, as you know, I married a woman that I knew back in college.
Uh-huh.
She's expecting her 8th grandkid.
Wow.
Those kids call me Batman for whatever reason.
Oh, wow.
So I'm Batman over there and a Pops over here. But when we get everybody together, like we had all the grandkids, were 14 at that time, and one of those grandkids over there said, hey, how come you call Batman Pops?
That's pretty fun. That is pretty. So, did any of them convert the other one to call them the other?
No,
they stuck to their own.
Pops and Batman.
Yeah, it works.
Well, my grandkids, I've got 2 now, and they call me Pops.
Really?
Yeah.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
I guess it kind of became more.
It's a popular thing now, I guess.
I remember calling my dad Pops.
Yeah.
But it's mostly like I was kind of teasing him a little bit.
Yeah.
What's up, Pops? That kind of thing. But I guess it carries on.
So you went into sales with Deluxe with your dad, right? Your dad worked at the company.
He worked at the company. He was always in production. And
Right.
And actually, he was in Minnesota at the corporate office while I was in the New Orleans plant.
Now, was that while you were still in school, or was that after graduating?
While I was in school, I did work at the plant after he left as just in the office help.
Okay.
But when I graduated, after a short stint in another state, I came back down, approached the sales manager in New Orleans and got a job there. And so I worked 2 weeks in New Orleans, and then I got transferred to Texas. I said it'd be 6 months to a year, and evidently something came up quick. So here I was in Texas, never left. And it would really take something to get me to leave.
Right.
This is the place to live.
So you graduated from college. You already had strong work ethics.
Mm-hmm.
You had a good disciplined upbringing, and you went to college.
Mm-hmm.
And you haven't brought that up yet. I'm really amazed because
I always tell you I paid for my own education.
And then you talk about this particular school. I'm not going to say it. I'm going to let him say it.
It's the University of Southern Mississippi.
And it's more of a religion than a college, really, because I mean,
it is right now. We're like 130th on the rank of 134 schools. So our football program's not doing great. Back when I went there, we won all the time. Brett Favre went to Southern Mississippi. You know, he was actually right after me, but we had a great program up until then. Up and beyond then. But Southern Miss is a great place. I did. I was on the swim team, and I was in a fraternity, and I saw the president of the school. He worked at the school back when I was going. And I was telling him, the Greek program is in kind of a decline. A lot of discipline issues, a lot of things that, they want to try and straighten up. So Greeks have suffered. But I said, I say it all the time. I learned way more in swim team and fraternity than I ever did in class, as far as things that are worthwhile in a career and in life in general.
Yeah.
So I would hate to see that go away. Sports, in my opinion, and this is what I taught my kids, I wasn't ever thinking I was going to make any money. You don't, swimming. And I never thought my kids would make any money in it, but you learn all these valuable lessons.
You learn about
Think about a work ethic. Think about
you learn about score.
Yeah.
You learn about results. You learn about responsibility of your part to a team.
playing with pain.
Yeah.
Sacrifice. Yeah. Those are things that you can say you're going to get it elsewhere, and you can get it elsewhere.
Right.
But it sure comes
Not
easy.
as effective.
No, it's
it's a perfect little microcosm for adversity.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I grew up sporting and then coaching some, and I used to tell these guys, I said, you're not going to play basketball past high school, except for maybe rec league or something.
That's right.
But what you'll learn is how to be men.
Yeah.
And how to do all the cool goal setting and achieving that's going to come next. And they've all, when I run into them, they're all moving forward. It's pretty cool. They're all men now. They're all dads. Heck, they're probably pops for all I know now. Because I wasn't that much older than them at the time. But I knew enough to know that, and my dad played up through college and some semi-pro basketball. So we were around it all the time, and you picked that stuff up. So that's good. I'm glad that you pressed your sons to get into those things, And there's lots of things. I mean, sports is one of those. I mean, it could even be the kids who are like saying band or something. I mean, that's a year-round program.
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons I like to bring up both of the two things.
Yeah.
Okay. The fraternity, the sports, they're not the same. You learn a lot of the same things.
Right.
Again, working as a team. I learned how to communicate with a whole group of people.
Yes.
You learn how to deal with one individual that, can we say asshole here?
You can.
You learn how to deal with the assholes.
Right. Yeah.
And you have to.
We've had a lot worse language than that.
I'll try not to add to it. Anyway, extracurricular activities of all kinds.
Right.
On a college level, I felt like it was it was an experience I wouldn't have met. One of my fraternity brothers' family owned Sanderson Farms, Miss Goldie Chicken. His family did. I remember reading when he sold out one day, sold his shares, and it was the largest sale on the New York Stock Exchange that day.
Wow.
Okay. Again, I was paying for my own school.
Right.
I worked construction. And, it was we had a different lifestyle.
Certainly.
But still, we were friends. I still talk to him today. And you learn through things like that there is no real difference if you find the commonalities. Remember that in sales? Commonality. Because there's always something we have in common.
Right.
Norwegian heritage, stuff like that.
There you go. Exactly.
Well, I'm listening to you talk, and what I hear is this dichotomy of experience. You've got the college educational, the academia experience, but what it sounds like you're saying, and I mean, it's not sound like it's overtly what you're saying, is that the most value you gained at that time in your life was everything that happened outside
of class,
of academia.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to ask a silly question. What'd you go to school for? What did you graduate with a degree in?
Well,
I already know the answer.
It's obvious to everybody watching as I talk that my degree's in accounting.
Right. That's exactly what I mean, that's what I would
People say that all the time.
That was y'all's first guess?
Yeah, accounting.
People say that all the time.
So, and what I said the reason I asked that was definitely for the audience's benefit. I've known this my whole life, but was to point out how many times in your life did you apply that degree in real life? Once you left college,
you would argue
maybe some little facets of it.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
The
I
application
definitely didn't sit down and do books and run spreadsheets and things
Didn't
like
become a
that.
CPA.
No. I mean, it was really before my last year of school. I said, "Wow, I don't want to do this." But
Right.
now it's so close. I just finished and got the
Yeah.
degree. But immediately, I went to work for my uncle in sales, and I said, "This is great. They pay you to talk to people, you know, and if you like people, it's all the better."
Yeah.
You know, when somebody tells you
work.
yeah.
Right.
So you'll hear people say, "I don't like people." Well, I'm sorry they don't, really,
Right.
because they miss out on a lot of life.
They certainly do.
Because that's the most fun.
As a preacher friend, you mentioned your son's a preacher, once told me, he said, related to the created, that's what we do.
That's exactly right.
Matter of fact, he actually recently, after 30 something years, has left another church. And for a little bit, he got out of the business and he got into sales. I think it's a roofing company near where his son lives. And he's like, I don't know anything about roofing. I go, you don't have to, you know about people. And he's a people lover. And we were just on the phone. I was just doing a little bit of coaching as we do on the phone. And I said, just go into any office, a real estate office, or go into an insurance company and just get to know them. And he goes, I can do that. Yes, you can do that. And he seemed to leave thinking, I think I could do that somehow. I could sell shingles. I go, yeah, eventually it'll come up.
Absolutely.
So, no, good point.
Well, and talk to somebody long enough, eventually they're going to ask you what you do.
What do you do?
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The other thing you can do is you can find out the things that you have in common. Which
That's
again, right. We taught that all the time. Number one most important value in sales is commonality.
Yes.
So you may be from total different backgrounds, but if you like fishing and I like fishing, we talk about fishing.
There you go.
You know, if you like women and I like women, we talk about women. If you don't like women and I don't like women, we talk about women.
Yeah.
Actually, we talk about women anyway.
That's right.
They're going to bear the brunt of it.
That's right.
So I said all that about the college thing, not to say that there was any discount to the value of going to school, but to point out that the greater value is not just in the education that you get in the classroom.
That's right.
It's the education you get about life in the experience around the classroom.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I love the way that you illustrated that. I think that'll play very well, and I hope the audience appreciates it also.
So it seems like, real quick, it seems like we have either missed out or we've allowed some type of degrading of era. I think we're in a similar age range. And when I was in school, I did go to college. There was more of a global emphasis. They almost put us in situations where we would have to mingle.
Yeah.
We would have to get together.
Yes.
And some of it was project driven. I went to a Christian college in Oklahoma. So things would come through and they would say, hey, we're going to take, a bunch of you guys and gals, and we're going to go over and we're going to help these families because a tornado hit or something. And we loved it, you know? And so here I'm working with guys and I don't even know these people. I know they go to school with me, but I don't know them.
Right.
But by the end of the day, you know who they are. And then you're looking for them and these sorts of things. And the class just seemed, it was his own department. It was his own compartment.
That's right.
But yeah, I appreciated that. And maybe we do some of that. I don't know. I know I have a kid that recently got out of school within the last 5 years or so, and maybe a little bit of it, but not as much as I think we're recalling.
I think they're getting away from that as much as possible.
Yeah.
Our federal government likes control. And so, they come up with a bunch of different ways to control us. One is with entrance exams, right?
Yes.
So you got a college entrance exam and,
you got exit exams and entrance exams.
Yeah. But did you know that you had to have different scores? Of course, the Supreme Court just recently threw this out. And we always knew you had to have different scores, but by different ethnicities, you had a different score. But what I didn't know until recently is my grandkids that are Asian, Neil's kids, they had to score higher than any other ethnicity. Now, what is the purpose of a diversity program? They can't even get in without having a higher score than every other ethnicity. What's the reason that you would discriminate on the government level against Asians? What?
Right.
And this is in the diversity program.
Right.
So when they come up with this stuff, you realize what it is, in my opinion, it's still lobbying, right? Yeah. Somebody's lobbying and say, you got to keep those people out of our school, make them have a higher test score.
Right.
So the people that supposedly are working towards fairness, they're not. They're only working towards the lobbyist that pays them the most.
That's exactly right.
In my humble opinion.
They're working towards advantage. It has nothing to do with fairness.
Right.
No, nothing to do with fairness.
Well, and I know we're kind of drifting a little bit of that bureaucratic scene, but it seems as though in a lot of cases. I'm sure, I know you work with a lot of, the ag folks, and I'm sure, I like to think there's some still pure at heart folks in certain departments,
Right.
in law enforcement and things like that. But then there are other departments where it's really just to keep myself employed.
Yeah.
And so if I can keep a problem, I can maintain myself as part of the solution, and therefore I am now still in a job.
Isn't that sad?
It is sad.
It is.
It is sad. As a matter of fact, I didn't realize this until some time back, and I guess a predecessor to this type of format. I was listening to Rush one day, and Rush Limbaugh, and he was talking about, do you guys realize that there are whole degrees in Middle East peace, which means they never want to solve it.
Oh no.
Because as long as there's a problem, then the degree plan is still getting funds and grants and students and all these things. I'm thinking, I never even thought about that. And I'm sure there's a host of things, even in the continental U.S., that still supply themselves, as long as we have to maintain a problem so that we will always have a degree, of some sort, or a bureaucracy of some sort.
It's fascinating to me. We saw when Elon Musk bought Twitter, he fired what percentage of the workforce? 70 to 80.
Yeah, a lot.
Wow.
Majority.
And I've been on Twitter. I didn't notice a difference, right?
At first.
Well, the differences were positive. I didn't notice a difference in service.
You didn't notice a decline. Yeah,
No,
absolutely.
got rid of 70% of the employees, and you don't even miss them.
What does that tell you?
That's what happens with bureaucracy. So just like you say, okay, I've got this problem. I'm supposed to work on this glitch. I'm going to need 3 more people working there. And whatever you do, don't solve that glitch, because we want to hire more people next year.
Yes.
Now, this is a really bad path to go down because we'll never get this interview finished. But
Okay.
I'm going to add to it.
Okay.
So think about this.
Yeah.
How many IRS agents did we just hire?
84,000. I don't think they hired them.
Well, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They got approval.
Right.
But think, do we even know how many IRS employees there are overall?
I don't think we could. No, probably nobody knows.
And can you imagine what that would do to our national debt and our national budget if we just eliminated them all at once?
Yeah.
We would have an influx of money like nothing we could even imagine,
Right.
higher than we could even contemplate
Right.
in tax dollars.
I think
it's
exactly.
it's a preposterous agency to begin with.
Oh, right. It is.
So anyway, I hate to get in the weeds too much, but it's part of the same system.
It is the same system.
But so we'll get back to you now.
Oh, to me.
Yes.
Well,
So-
not as interesting a subject.
Well, it's on topic though.
Okay.
We find it interesting.
Okay.
So you found yourself in Southeast Texas.
Yes.
Through several moves,
Yep.
you finally made it to God's country.
Yeah.
And we welcome you here. You assimilated just fine.
Okay.
And did you know you've been here 39 years now?
Wow. How did you know that number?
We met at a certain time in my life. I
That's
just did the math.
It is 39 is right on the money.
39 years.
That's good. And that's an attestation to your education.
Well, I'm gonna say that you're here because of me.
I probably came because of you. I almost left because of you.
yeah.
In all seriousness, I got to say, this guy was a hell of a sales guy. I mean, really.
Nice.
At 18 years old, I'm going to bypass him. He bypassed me, went to my sales manager, said, I want to do what he's doing. And he was 18.
Wow.
And by the way, he had grease all under his fingernails. He said, I don't want grease under my fingernails anymore. And I suppose it was probably a year or two, maybe not that long, before he picked up this client, and I won't say who it is, but it was a big municipality. The total commission was like $250,000.
Wow. Wow.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say now. That wasn't part of the script here. It's not in the question.
I'm just saying.
That's a great testimony.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
That's
again,
awesome.
under 20, and he was having the success that nobody else in my office was
There you
having.
go. That's why
Wow.
he does what he does and does it well.
That's it.
There you
Well,
go.
thank you.
Well,
I
it gives you a
appreciate
lot
that.
of credit, Ken. That's for
And we
sure.
didn't even pay him for that. Thank you.
No.
Well, not yet.
There it is. That's the guy that taught me right there.
That's good.
So anyway,
There's always a close.
so 39 years ago,
Yes.
you were in a career.
Yes.
And it brought you here, or you brought it here.
It brought me
A
here.
little combination of the two.
Yeah.
And what was that?
That was the sales position with deluxe check printers.
Right. So you then, from there, what was next?
I started a payroll business.
And okay.
It was a franchise, and we, because I worked with banks, I went to all of those bank clients and asked if I could do their payroll. And I had a high percentage of the banks back when there was a lot of independent banks. Now there's 3.
Yeah.
But there, at one time, people would be surprised. Pretty much every little town had 3 banks. And so I had a lot of those clients. It was a good, clean business. It was fun. And a guy came by. He was a fraternity brother of mine, and visiting. He said, you should get an insurance license and sell insurance to these bank customers. These customers, they weren't all banks. And so I got the license. Went to work with your old buddy. I guess we're not going to say his name either. Anyway, another gentleman, we met him, and Robbie knew him. But he and I think we can mention Teddy's name. So three of us were in the top 10 for Aflac in sales, and we started in October. So we're the top 10 for that year after having started in October.
Wow.
So it was a good gig. It was a good fit, and we did well with it. But then you remember the guy that I'm not mentioning his name said, we're too good for this.
Yes.
We need to be managers.
Yeah. Oh,
so he called another company, came down, they offered us the management position, and then I ended up being the one that took the role as manager, and we did well there. That's about when you came on.
Yeah. I was there in the transition.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You were. And just had a lot of fun, a lot of success. So anyway, that was payroll and insurance. And if you remember, I kept the payroll business going for quite a while we were still doing insurance. I sold it like twice. I think we repoed it twice. Yeah. I think that's
So what it sounds like you did, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you acclimated into this selling checks business, and then you wanted to grow past that. So you parlayed your relationships, experience, and abilities into an independent business, an entrepreneurial endeavor.
Yes.
Is that right?
That is.
And then you took that entrepreneurial pursuit and parlayed it into an insurance endeavor and grew it.
Yes.
Is that right?
That is right.
So how long were you in the insurance business?
Well, I've been grandfathered on my license. I'm still getting insurance checks. Some from those clients from way back when.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I can't think, but they very well could be.
Wow.
Anyway, so that's the thing about, clients. You and some of those people, I may be doing business with them today, that I'm selling a different product than I did 30 years ago. But anyway, it never really goes away. Fortunately.
So it sounds to me like you took all of that stuff and just became an ultimate salesman.
I don't know about ultimate, but
you ultimately became a salesman.
Well said. Yes, I ultimately became a salesman.
And you used that and that ability, that talent, and the experiences that you gained and the wisdom that you developed to move that through any endeavor that you entered into.
I think so.
For pay or volunteer.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Relationships are always the same. The ingredients of a relationship work in every area.
So take me through a process.
Okay.
If I were a prospective customer, what would we do to begin?
Well, obviously, the first thing we do is we'd share each other's name, and then we would ask some questions. And so we're not talking about business questions. We're talking about personal questions. So by the way, Robbie, what do you do? Where do you live? Right?
Yeah.
And then he says, yeah, I live so-so. And then I'm going to interject a little bit about what I do so that we find that commonality. Right?
Build rapport.
Yeah, you live in a rural area. I live in a rural area. You had horses. Do you still have any horses?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I had horses. You have cows. I've had cows. We find that commonality.
Yeah.
And then if you find those things that you're not in common with, like I was a Republican chairman of Hardin County for 18 years. If you're a Democrat, we're not going to talk about that again. We're done with that.
You learn from those
That's
things.
right.
So what you're saying is it's not just important to talk, it's important to listen.
Absolutely. So that's what that meeting is. Then we get into the business issues. What are some of your concerns in your business? We find out what those are. We address them just loosely, big picture wise, and then I come back later on with a solution that hopefully meets the issues that he talked about. And in that second call, you're still going through the relating process, but you're now talking solutions, and hopefully come to a point where you just say, based on this, do you think we can do business together? That's
Something I've learned from you over the years, and I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I think that's it.
If you weren't quite finished. But something I've learned from you over the years is you've got mastery of two different little arts that go with your craft.
Okay.
Number one is you've mastered the art, maybe it's a science, of the apology. So that has gone a long way for you. And I learned a lot from you in that regard, which relates to taking responsibility,
Absolutely.
taking accountability,
Absolutely.
even if it's not your fault. If you were involved in it arriving,
That's right.
you own it.
You can always find a reason to take responsibility for part of it. And that's really all most, especially customers, want to hear. Most people in general want to hear. You know, it was funny back in those days when we were working, one of your friends or co-workers got a bad call, and I took it and I was handling it. And she said, "That's the best apology I've ever heard." And I took that as a big accomplishment.
Yeah.
Because I did mean to seriously apologize. And yeah, it's a big part of life.
So the other thing I said, there were two.
Yeah.
It's remembering the right things at the right time.
Yes.
And I don't even think you necessarily acknowledge, or you may not even be conscious that you do this, but I've admired it and I've watched you and learned from you. And I'm curious, do you have any tricks that you do to help you remember the right things at the right times?
I don't remember. I really don't think
Humor's important too.
I really don't think I have a trick to and I really probably wouldn't even recognize that I do it, except when you say it, I think maybe, yeah, that might be right.
And even if you don't remember, you're really good at masking it.
Yes.
Well, if you can't, baffle them with your brilliance.
Yeah. Yes.
Dazzle them with your brilliance. You baffle them with your bullshit.
That's exactly right. So I'm going to ask you a loaded question. We're drawing closer to, we're past the halfway point. We've learned a lot. Thank you for sharing everything. Do you consider yourself a success?
Yes.
That's a great answer. I like how, you thought about it for a brief second and then you answered.
Yeah.
That's really good. And if you lost everything, monetarily, business, if you lost it all right now, what would you do?
I would gather my family together. Remember, the most important thing in my life is my family. I would appreciate them for a good week or so, and I'd figure out another way to make money.
You'd keep going.
Absolutely. As you know, I've been there.
Yes.
Had a pretty big loss. I got sued for $3.5 million one time.
Cool.
Yeah. But you come back.
There's a fascinating thing about people that have entrepreneurial desire, entrepreneurial passion. It's that what looks like loss, what looks like horrible situations to everybody else is just opportunity.
Just another step.
Just a way for them to expand, learn, and accomplish something new.
Yep.
Which kind of begs the question, and I'm going to use an F word here. We've all, and I'll just for the sake of making it good conversation. So, what has any kind of failure or setback meant to you?
It meant just what we just said. A failure means you have to get started back again. And one of my biggest failures, we had this opportunity. We were written up in a bunch of the financial magazines. We're going to be hugely successful, and in essence, we were, consuming sludge at the paper mill up in Evadale, and then we're going to sell methane back to the plant. And natural gas is 80% methane. And it was a great program. Everybody loved it. They wrote us up. We got this great 5-page document written from their people about what a great program this was. Problem for us is during the time of our pilot plant, natural gas went from $10 a million BTUs to $2. And that one year, suddenly none of the economics worked.
80% drop in price.
Yeah. So that was a tough deal. So obviously we closed that thing down, and I really had to start all over. But it's kind of funny because while there, we used a payroll service, and it worked well for us there. So when this fell off, I went to the payroll company and said, I can do what you do. That's why I'm doing a high percentage of what I'm doing now. Worked out fine.
How about that?
Yeah.
There you go. Well, it's a good true life story as to how to handle something that we had no control over. It was the market. It was what it was.
It was the market.
Yeah.
So is there anything you're afraid of? Any fears you have?
Yeah, I think I'm still afraid of failure.
Okay.
I'm still afraid of letting people down. During that time, again, my oldest son, I was scared to death that I was going to fail. And he and my dad were both working with us. I was just afraid to, fail, and then he didn't have a job. weirdest thing happened. One day he come up to me and said, "Look, Dad, I'm sorry." He said, "I hate to leave you in the lurch." He said, "But I got this great opportunity. Do you mind if I take it?" And I realized he was staying with me, trying to make sure. Yeah, that's it.
Wow.
Yeah, he's he's doing great now. He's a national sales manager and just doing wonderfully.
Chip off the old blockhead.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's way smarter. But the deal is, I really held him back, thinking I was helping
You
him.
didn't hold him back.
Well, no, but for 6 weeks maybe.
Yeah. You gave him some of the greatest lessons and opportunities. And were it not for that foundation and those principles and fundamentals that he got through that time, that opportunity probably wouldn't have materialized the same way.
I think working with his grandfather was great for him. That was good. But if you don't mind, another story about Robbie.
Okay.
We were out duck hunting one time, and I hear him yell, and I look, and he's chasing down my 2 boys, and they're rolling, they're fighting, punching, and Robbie goes to break it up, right? And he's got them separated like this, and all of a sudden he lets go of the younger one, who runs up and punches him.
There was blood all over.
He didn't have a lot of exposure breaking up fighting sons yet.
I mean, just let them finish. Just let them.
We let them finish a lot.
There you go.
That probably wasn't a great environment. They were in waders in the water. There could have been a fatality. It probably was a good time to break it up.
That's a great story.
But I'll never forget, I hear him go, "Hey!" He runs. And I'm kind of chuckling at this because I've been through it, but it was a good idea to break it up.
Oh,
It's a great story.
That is a great
I can remember it vividly. I can see where we were. We were at Steinhagen Lake at Dam B, and I can see the exact spot.
Yeah.
I can see the grayness of the trees, and I can still feel the cold in the air, and the anger along with the cold.
Some anger.
That's
So, can you define a word for me, please?
Yeah.
In your own words.
Okay.
What is a leader?
A leader is somebody who hits predetermined goals through the efforts of other people.
That's a great way to say it.
That's not original with me, but I like it.
That's pretty good. I mean, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, we say the same thing in our practice. We say a leader is someone who creates more leaders, but you said the exact same thing, just a different interpretation. It means the exact same thing. I like that. I may borrow that from time to time.
Hit the goals with the help of other people.
Yeah, and you want to have a goal. Most people don't have a goal. So, I want to be a leader, but a leader for what?
Exactly.
You start with what is the goal we want to accomplish, and then you're not a leader if you're the one doing the work. You're just a worker bee.
Right.
Are you a leader?
Yeah, I am.
When did you become a leader? Do you remember?
I think that's one of those things you start out in high school, college, at younger age, maybe younger than that.
Began developing early.
Yeah. When I was a little kid, I was the toughest kid on the street. You back then when we were in school, you could determine that.
Yeah.
At school at recess, we could fight, and you could determine. And so you knew what the pecking order was.
Right.
And so I can remember the kids riding their bikes up there, all upset. All the neighbor kids. I wasn't on this trip with them. Kids, you got to come here real quick. What's wrong? These big guys beat us all up. So again, I'm these guys' age, but I got to go up there and fortunately for me, they were gone when I got there. But that was part of the role,
Right.
Responsibility.
That's great. So we're drawing very close to the end. You've done very well. I think you've given a lot of amazing information and stories that are going to be very inspirational.
Well, prompted me.
Well done. So if you could give advice to a younger person who is aspiring to be an entrepreneur of any kind, would there be any advice? Let's say they're young. Let's say they're in their 20s, fresh out of academia and just about to, either they're just about to leave mom and dad's home or they've already left. Yep. Any advice you might give to them? Yeah.
First of all, I would advise somebody starting out, get a job or some form of income and try and save some of what you make. Do that for a short amount of time or long amount of time. Have a goal for what you're going to do with the money when you get it.
Yeah.
And then come up with something that suits you, that you like, and then use the money and then use what you've learned. Because, again, most businesses fail because they run out of capital. If most people don't save money, they spend way more than they make. You may remember before I started my payroll business, I was saving 30% of my income.
I do remember.
And it was just, I thought you had to do that. There's been a lot of times I've spent 30% more than I made, but you know, the business changes happen and that kind of thing. But still, a young person has to learn how to manage resources.
Well, that's a lesson in discipline.
Yeah.
And then also learning the value of self-reward for achieving a goal.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's a very multifaceted.
I would say most people don't talk that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most people don't think about that. They might have all the other ideas to do it, but if you learn how to, spend less than you make over a long period of time, you're going to be successful.
The compound effect.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's not original with me either.
No, that's James Clear.
Okay. Well, I was quoting Larry Burkett.
Or the Bible.
The Bible. Larry Burkett, was before Dave Ramsey.
Yeah.
Spend less than you make for a long period of time, you're successful.
You're going to be a success.
Chuck, you got anything?
Well, just kind of wrapping. It's more of a compliment. Thank you. What a pleasure to spend time with you. And
This has been fun.
Yeah, thank you. Likewise. And just to kind of get some of the highlights of your journey. But I really do appreciate your passion for people, and especially because on numerous occasions it's been young people. It's been looking at those prep ages, the high school to college with your own kids, and then with other folks you've been able to influence. You pulled this pup, from the litter. And,
he pulled himself out.
Yeah, he does great.
That's how I got in a lot of trouble too.
Maybe that's right. Guilt by association. Maybe.
Maybe so.
But no, it's great to just spend time with you and just get to know what makes you tick, man, and relate to fellow Viking, as we go out and conquer the world,
We've done it several times.
And we may be called on again, so I'll be too far away.
Yeah, probably.
But anyway, thank you for taking the time. Appreciate it.
I've got my final question to ask.
Ask me.
This is my favorite question
Okay.
of the whole thing.
Okay.
If you could go back in time, and you're going to talk to yourself now, and give yourself some advice. Let's say before you went to Ole Miss.
Southern Miss.
Or Southern Miss.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please forgive
Yeah,
me.
it kind of hurt, but
I'm so sorry. I didn't go to any college.
LSU beat them this week. That was good.
Yeah. So forgive me for my slip.
No problem.
I hope I can still make it into heaven. But anyway, if you could go back in time before you went to college and give yourself some advice, all you can do is give yourself advice, but you felt confident that you were going to hear it. What might you tell your younger self?
It's funny because I kind of felt like I knew where you're going with this question, and I don't know that there's a lot of things I'd do differently. So I don't know that I'd tell myself a whole lot. I think I'd try and tell myself to enjoy the relationships more. Lots of times I'm not a task person. I've accomplished some tasks, but I'm really a relationship person. But still, sometimes I missed opportunities to spend time with friends and that kind of thing. So I'd probably try and get to focus on that.
That's good.
Yeah,
There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
And that question, I don't know if you've listened to any of our shows or
Parts.
but that question, we get some pretty fascinating answers because it invokes so much of a different mode of thought. But I appreciate that. That's a profound answer. Focus on relationships and enjoy them more.
Yeah.
That's very good. Very good.
Indeed.
Well, Kent, thank you so much.
Thank you again, my brother.
Here on Pursuit of
It's
Purpose.
good to see him all grown up.
Don't accuse me of such things. I've got a long way to go before I reach that grown up.
Well, that's probably true.
And I have no intention of ever making it there. In case there's any of you wondering.
Yeah, it's not a goal.
Not a goal. No.
Well, guys, thanks for joining us again for another episode of Pursuit of Purpose. I'm Robbie.
I'm Chuck.
And today we've had with us
Kent.
Batman. Thank you for allowing us to become a part of the pursuit of your purpose. Y'all have a great day.
In pursuit of